Thank you for tuning in to Entertain the Geeky, your source for nerd news.
Hey guys, this is Jason back at you with Nerd News. So, this is our first broadcast of 2018, and some things have happened in the past few weeks that are worth talking about. I'd like to start with a current story that really has been on everybody's mind. It looks like Marvel might be moving forward. Looks like Marvel Studios might be moving forward with their Black Widow movie. And I think it's about time we see a Black Widow story. I mean, I've said before that the character is definitely worthy of inclusion in a solo film, and there's plenty of amazing backstory that really just hasn't been explored in the film universe. We've had a little bit of, kind of flashbacks and various different things, and kind of trying to understand her origin. We went into Avengers: Age of Ultron, and we kind of got a little bit of the Red Room, which, if you don't know, is a secret Russian facility where they train young girls to be assassins. So even if we were just going to retell that story, and we were just going to give a past and then maybe kind of segue that into her introduction to Hawkeye, which we know is the person who was sent to kill her and then made a different call. So I think it's, Wonder Woman has definitely changed the game. I think Hollywood is finally starting to realize what we've all known for so long as comic fans, that female-led stories are and can be very, very well received by the fan base. Marvel Comics for a long time has published Black Widow comics in one form or another, and Captain Marvel, which is coming to our screens next year, has definitely is definitely moving things in the right direction as far as giving women more of a presence at the forefront of film. And I think it's an interesting revolution that we're seeing in film and in television with things like Supergirl, that has shown us that these characters can be just as engaging, if not more so, than their male counterparts. So nothing has really been officially announced about this yet. There is rumor that a screenwriter is attached, but Kevin Feige and Disney have still made no official announcement. We do know, as going forward past Avengers 4, we have Spider-Man Homecoming 2, which is obviously a tentative title. We have Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, which James Gunn has said is going to explore and kind of develop the cosmic universe a little further with characters like Adam Warlock and the original Guardians. So it's an interesting time to put something like that on the books. Obviously, we don't know where. I'm not sure exactly where Scarlett Johansson's contract ends, but as we saw with Robert Downey Jr., all they have to do is offer the right amount of money, and they can get anybody back. And we started to hear about other people who don't want their characters to go away. Chris Hemsworth has said in interviews that he wants to continue playing Thor, even though his contract is up, because he feels like we've finally gotten to a place where Thor is more well received than he has ever been. I mean, Thor and Thor: The Dark World, while I thought they were great movies, weren't as well received by the fans as things like Captain America and Iron Man and Guardians. But Thor Ragnarok really killed it, and took the character in a different direction. And I think they're going to continue that direction in the next two Avengers movies that we're going to see Thor in. So hopefully, Kevin Feige will give us some kind of announcement on the Black Widow movie at some time in the future. Sticking with Marvel, over on the comics side, a big announcement has been made that the rights of Conan the Barbarian have reverted to Marvel. Now, if you're unfamiliar, Marvel published Conan comics for such a long time. I mean, I'm not even really 100% sure, but I know it was a very, very long time that they were steady publishing Conan comics, and they introduced characters like Red Sonja, who in her own right became a property that has seen a lot of success over the years with the publisher Dynamite, and that's where Conan was for a long time. Conan was with Dark Horse for a long time. So it looks like their contract with Dark Horse is finally up, and Marvel has decided not to renegotiate and is going to bring Conan back into the fold. Now, no official announcement for a comic series has been forthcoming yet, but I would say that the fact that they didn't renew the contract and that they make this big announcement that Conan is back means that we're probably going to start seeing Conan the Barbarian comics published from Marvel probably sometime this year. Now, as far as who will write or illustrate these comics, those announcements have not been made, but I will definitely keep you up to date as more information becomes available. And I'm very interested to see what, if anything, Marvel will change about Conan. Will they just continue on from where they left off? Will they try to do some kind of soft reboot of the character? Conan is a character that has enjoyed mild success at Dark Horse as a comic property, and we've seen various movies and things, the most recent of which was not as well received. Everybody remembers fondly the movies that Arnold Schwarzenegger starred in. As silly as they were, they held a special place in the heart of fans of Conan the Barbarian. So it'll be interesting to see what, if anything, Marvel does now that they have this property back. Over on the superhero side of things, Marvel has started a weekly series called Phoenix Resurrection, The Return of Jean Grey. Now, we all knew this would come eventually. I, for one, am surprised it has taken them this long to bring back Jean Grey. We've had young Jean Grey within the folds, starting off in All New X-Men. The 5 original X-Men were brought forward in time by Beast at a time when it was thought that the innocence and the heroism that they brought to the table in their era was necessary to get the X-Men back on track. So that came into a comic, All New X-Men, and it was expertly written by Brian Michael Bendis. It is very, very interesting to see a younger version of her adapting to a timeline where she is dead, and adapting to the things that have happened to Jean since the time of the younger version of her. Now, that younger version of her is missing, presumed dead. They presumably killed her off in her own solo series, Jean Grey. She's also been popping up in the pages of X-Men Blue, but we don't really know why at this juncture they have chosen to bring the older Jean Grey back, and why that means the younger Jean Grey cannot continue to exist. I would assume it has something to do with the cosmic Phoenix entity and the balance that it has tying itself to a single individual. But the comic itself has been quite interesting, and some mild spoilers are going to follow, so if you have not read the comic, I really, really urge you to go out and check it out, because it's actually been quite an engaging read, even for me, who, I'm not the biggest fan of Jean Grey as a character. But it's interesting to see what they've done with this comic, because they've essentially created a weird small town world where Jean and several other members of the X-Men and their rogues gallery that have died in previous comics are living. So whether this was something that was created by Jean or the Phoenix entity is still yet to be seen, but something has changed, and the residents of this weird town have begun crossing over into the real world and coming at odds with the X-Men. So they can't really, the X-Men are really scrambling to try to understand what this means, but we see these moments in the town. Jean is just a waitress at a coffee shop, with characters like Cassidy, Banshee, if you're unfamiliar, and Magneto, and Madrox. There's actually the Multiple Man. There's actually a really funny joke with Madrox where Jean is leaving for work, and he's mowing the lawn, and he's apparently in this town got some kind of lawn service, and as she drives away, the panel pans out to see a whole bunch of versions of him on different lawns mowing and various things. So it's kind of a little funny nod to Multiple Man as a character in a normal setting. And in the second issue, we actually get to see Magneto come into the coffee shop. He sits down, he orders some coffee from Jean, and when she turns around to bring the coffee to him, he's gone. And then we cut back to the, I guess, quote-unquote real world where the X-Men currently reside, and they end up in a fight with Magneto. And upon defeating him, he just disappears. And then we cut back to the small town, and he's back in the booth, waiting for his coffee. So there is some implication that what happened actually did happen, because he's got kind of a bloody nose. So, at this stage, I've only read the first 2 issues, and it is a weekly series, and the third one is sitting in my pull and hold at my local comic shop, waiting. And so I'm going to pick it up, I'm going to keep reading it, but it is a weekly series, bringing Jean back and kind of hopefully building into something more. We've got some new X-Men comics coming. One is called X-Men Red, and it seems as if it's going to be a team that's led by Jean. And X-Men Black, which seems is going to be kind of a newer version of X-Force. So that will make 4 series of X-Men comics. We have X-Men Blue and X-Men Gold ongoing, which have both been very interesting comics in their own right. So we're adding 2 new colors to the mix. So it's a very interesting time to be an X-Men fan. They're really shaking things up and kind of building towards something. I mean, we don't know what they're building towards yet, but they are building towards something big. So let's switch over to the TV side of things for a minute. There has been rumor, no official announcements yet, but there has been rumor that people at the CW are working on bringing Hitman to television. And no, I don't mean the video game character Hitman, I mean the Garth Ennis superpowered assassin from DC Comics back in the day. While he, kind of had his own, he was a superpowered, gun-for-hire type guy who operated in the Cauldron, which is, if you're unfamiliar, the Irish district of Gotham City. So it was a very interesting kind of pocket of the DC universe, and it felt very separate from everything else, but it still existed within the world of DC because there was cameos from characters like Superman and obviously Batman. But it was a very violent comic, as Garth Ennis is known to do. If you're unfamiliar with Garth Ennis, he's the man who made Punisher viable again back in the 90s. He also wrote what is, in my opinion, one of the best Hellblazer arcs. So it's definitely interesting to see, if they are going to bring this to TV, how much of the violence and the very dark material that that kind of built that comic book will work in a CW television show, because they're known for being more kind of, not, I don't want to say family friendly, but they've definitely kept their storylines pretty PG-13, I guess is probably the appropriate way to describe it. So it'll be interesting to see, if the rumors turn out to be true, how this will fit into that universe, because Hitman is definitely a character that you can't soften the edges. I mean, you really have to show, in order for it to be what it is and be relevant still within the fans' minds, it has to be violent, it has to be gory. So it's possible that we might see this, again, these are all just rumors at this point, so we don't know if CW has picked it up. It's possible it could be picked up by Fox or ABC or one of the others, but it's still a very interesting property to bring to the TV market. I think when we look at where it would probably find its best home, I think it would probably find its best home on something like AMC, or even one of the pay movie channels like HBO or Showtime. But again, these are just rumors. We will keep you up to date here on Nerd News of all these things as they develop. Me personally, I'm a huge Hitman fan. I loved the comic back in the day. Now, honestly, that was because it was really violent and I was a teenager. But we'll see if anything comes of this. We've had similar rumors about the Watchmen television show, which is apparently moving forward with HBO. Damon Lindelof is writing it, and I think maybe going to be the showrunner. I'm not sure. There hasn't been an official announcement yet. So I think what TV is starting to see is not only are these properties viable, but adapting them in the way that makes the most sense is how you capture the right audience. So putting something like The Flash on CW, it makes sense. The Flash is a very bright kind of story about a hero who's protecting Central City. But when you look at properties like Walking Dead or Watchmen or even Hitman, they really don't belong in that vein. They belong on a more adult-oriented network where they can really shine. We've seen, things like I said, Walking Dead. Hopefully the Watchmen show with HBO will not shy away from the violence that made that comic, kind of an R-rated thing. Obviously we've seen Preacher on AMC, which is... I'm not really the biggest fan of the Preacher television show, but it definitely has a wide appeal. It's getting good ratings enough to be working on its second season. So we'll see where that goes. I'm going to switch things up here to the video game side of things. Something that has popped up, and this is going to get into a little bit of a discussion about these concepts. The Shadow of the Colossus remaster has come out, and if you're unfamiliar with Shadow of the Colossus, it was a PlayStation 2 game that was kind of revolutionary in its day for providing a gaming experience that was quite different from what we had up to that point. The game is entirely boss battles. It's 12 or 13. Yeah, I think 12, and then there's a hidden Colossus. But the Colossuses are these big, giant, ancient entities that you have to run around the map, on foot or on your horse and find their lairs and destroy them. And it was just a very interesting gaming experience, and it makes sense why they would remaster it. But that's kind of what I wanted to get into. I really do think that, nostalgia is important, and it's obviously a big selling tool in the video game industry. And while it is fun to relive those moments, I think it's worth noting that eventually we have to move forward. And while I probably will pick up the remaster and try it out because it was a game that I really enjoyed, I'm really kind of getting to the point where these remasters are becoming so ingrained into the market, when the companies that make them could really spend their effort creating a new IP, a new property, and I think we're really losing focus on the kinds of things that make the video game industry strong. And again, when you're a business and you're capitalizing on the nostalgia, it's an instant seller. People are going to buy it. People are going to love it. People are going to enjoy reliving the fun they had playing that video game. I mean, we've heard rumor that they might be remaking Resident Evil 2, which is another one that I will probably pick up and I will play. But it's a dangerous road to walk, where we the video game publishers are spending so much of their time and money just rehashing things that we've already done. And I would say with Shadow of the Colossus, it'd be interesting to do a new Shadow of the Colossus game. And I know what you're saying, or what you're thinking. There are unofficial sequels to Shadow of the Colossus in Ico, and The Last Guardian, which came out last year for PlayStation 4 and Xbox One. And while those are definitely feel like they're set in the same world and within the same vein, they are fundamentally different gaming properties and gaming ideas. So it would be interesting to see the company who's responsible for these kinds of things to move forward and try to do something new with their property. Because, again, as much as I enjoy nostalgia and as much as I will play these games and go back, I'm much more excited when I see something new coming. Even if that's not brand new, even if it's like a sequel of an older game. I mean, Resident Evil, Final Fantasy, these properties have proved time and time again that they can reinvent their franchises and bring something new to the table. I mean, Assassin's Creed Origins is another perfect example of a franchise that had become quite stale in its formulaic, mapping, and Origins has proven that even though it's still an Assassin's Creed game, we can find a new way to engage you. We can find something new to bring to the table. So I think that's a better road to walk than just this rehashing of old properties. And again, don't get me wrong, I'm not bashing this idea. I just really, really think that we could be doing much more within the video game industry. I mean, we're coming off of 2017, which many people are saying has been one of the best video game years in recent memory, with brand new IPs like Horizon Zero Dawn, sequels that blew people away like Nier Automata, and the Nintendo Switch coming out with new ways to engage us in properties that we are so familiar with at this point, like Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild and Super Mario Odyssey, which have taken formulas that have worked for so long and thrown them aside to build something new. And I think that's the kind of gaming creative culture that makes for good video gaming. So I really would like to see more of that. So that's going to bring us to the end. That's all I've got here for this episode, but I will definitely keep you up to date on some of these things that are still ongoing and some of these things that are rumors. If you haven't checked it out yet, swing on over to entertainthegeeky.com. We have completely overhauled the website. You can find all the podcasts there, as well as the blog where we'll be doing reviews, and Chris and Roger have some things coming down the pipeline that they will be posting there as well. Check us out on Facebook at facebook.com/entertainthegeeky, on Twitter at entertaingeeky. And definitely, if you're interested in talking or discussing anything with me, we do have an email. It's etgnerdnews@gmail.com. So etgnerdnews@gmail.com. I would love to hear from you guys. I would love to hear what you think of the show. I am the kind of person who enjoys talking. I used to work at a game store. and have these kinds of discussions with people. Mostly now I just sit here and talk about these things to you guys. So if you want to get into a deeper discussion about some of the things we cover in the show, please hit me up at etgnerdnews@gmail.com. I would love to talk about anything you want to talk about. So I will see you guys next week, and until then, stay geeky.